As a kid, I didn't really know very much, and a lot of things seemed almost magical to me because I didn't know about them or how they worked. Cars, magnets, TVs, and even as an adult, some of those things are still kind of magical. Like the microwave. How does it even work? They say it's these invisible microwaves, but they're invisible? Invisibility is magic. Harry Potter's cloak? Invisible and very magical. The Cheshire Cat? Invisible and extremely magical. And it also gives off heat? Like the sun, visible, and gives off heat. Fires, visible, give off heat. Even light bulbs, visible and give off heat. Okay, whatever. Besides the point. Another thing that was extremely magical to me as a kid was my video games. I would get sucked into these imaginary worlds that existed completely on a disc or a cartridge that could fit in the palm of my hand. Eventually, in junior high, I learned about computers, and in my head, my consoles suddenly turned from magic gaming boxes into computers. And then in high school, I learned that computers are actually just a few core components that do specific things. And then in college, I learned that you can control those components by writing code. But now the question is, how do you get from code like this to things like this? I took a little dip in the think tank and conjured up 3 different approaches to get from hello world to hello world. Approach number 1, start with game development square one. Learning, reading, and building my own games from really simple to more and more complex, until I can start comparing my own systems with the systems of Pokémon Emerald. That sounds like a great way to be a good game developer, and you would gain so much invaluable experience, but I'm looking for the fast pass to Pokémon Emerald. Definitely not the scenic route. I could start somewhere maybe in the middle between my current knowledge and Pokémon Emerald, but I don't really know what that would look like. Maybe getting a job as a game developer, but that could take months of applying, and it seems like a huge gamble that might not even pay off. Emerald just turned old enough to drink, and they just don't make games like that anymore. And lastly, I could start with Emerald and then work my way backwards. And this sounds like a pretty good option. I mean, I already have the whole game right here. Let's just dump it out and see if we can do a little reverse engineering to figure out what's going on in there. Okay, so I dumped everything from the cartridge using my GB operator by Epilogue, and there was just one file, a .gba file. That's just a bunch of hexadecimal values. That's not really code, is it? Well, it actually is. It's just been chewed up and spit out, and then chewed up again and spit out again, and then slapped together to make this nasty file. When turning code like this into programs, our code we wrote actually turns into assembly code, and then turns into an executable file for our computers to run. The CPU then reads this file as a list of instructions written in machine code, which is meant for machines to read. Unfortunately, that means it's practically unreadable for humans. But luckily for us, machine code can be pretty much directly translated into assembly code, which is much more readable to humans in a process called disassembling. A very fitting name for turning machine code back into assembly. And this is a lot closer to home sweet home of C and C++. There's even some real English words in here, but we're definitely not there yet. The next step is to decompile our assembly code back into C. And this part is a little bit trickier. With disassembling, the translation from machine code to assembly is almost one-to-one. One instruction of machine code directly translates to one line of assembly. But with decompiling, there's an aspect of the code that was lost when the game was initially compiled that can never be perfectly reverted. And that is context. When writing code, you should give your variables meaningful names that help other developers understand what they do and what they are. And you should write comments to help those developers understand even further. But those are the first things gone when turning code into a working program. They aren't useful to the machine, so they're deemed useless and thrown out immediately. Decompilation programs will be able to generate C that directly converts into the assembly that it originally came from. But everything, and I mean everything, will have generic names and virtually no organization that provide zero help in understanding the newly generated C code. And like I said, we can never get it back perfectly, but we can get close. With enough knowledge of how the GBA works and Pokemon Emerald, you can start giving these variables and functions proper names, and then fixing up any pieces of code that were weirdly translated. This is going to be a colossal undertaking, so I better get started doing this by myself. Oh, it's already been done. And it took an entire community? And yeah, there's an entire community dedicated to this process of decompiling and reverse engineering video games, and they're doing this for dozens of games right now. And each of these projects is a huge undertaking, deserving of an entire community's effort. There is no way I would have been able to decompile all of Emerald by myself within the next decade. There were dozens of people on the front lines of this project, digging through code, learning, and then contributing to the cause. And they opened the door for so many different people in the community, like the people who are actively getting to utilize that progress to do cool things like making mods and enhancements to these games. The community is really a cool place to be, and there are so many different resources for engaging with the community, like websites to learn about what games are being decompiled, Discord channels for connecting with people around these projects, and GitHub repositories with all of the code contributions from the community. I'll link a bunch of these resources in the description below. Thanks to the Pokemon Reverse Engineering Tools group, PRET for short, Pokemon Emerald has been completely decompiled into a well-organized project with a bunch of C code. Once you go through some of the helper files, you can actually turn all of this code into your own version of Pokemon Emerald that runs on emulators and on real hardware. And from there, the world is your oyster. You can start really digging in to understand the systems that make this game run. I like to experiment by finding some code, figuring out what it does, and then trying to make it do something else. Some pretty easy things to try are changing text that shows up at a specific event, like reading a sign or the intro monologue from Professor Birch. I can just look up some of the text within the project and then change those lines. Easy peasy. More of a challenge would be to change the options for the starting Pokemon. Again, text is really easy to look up, so I'll look up some of the text from right before the starter is selected, and then go down the rabbit hole until I can find something related to the starter selection or Birch's bag, and boom, I find all 3 starters that can be swapped by just changing the names. Then I can build the project, load it onto a cartridge, and test it out. The text has been changed during the intro, and then fast forward a little and the starter Pokemon are all different. Again, thanks to PRET, the team that put in the time and effort to reverse engineer this game, and then provide the world with this amazing and easy way to play with and learn about how these games were made. The possibilities from this point are truly endless. Like I mentioned earlier, people are redesigning the entire map of Emerald, making their own mods, and adding a lot of enhancements to modernize the game. And it's not just Emerald. There are so many games that are being unlocked for developers and dedicated fans to take even further, to create even more experiences like the ones we already know and love. And for the first time, I have someone else's code to show off. So I'll link the PokeEmerald GitHub repository that I did all my testing on, but check out some of the other projects from PRET as well. There are a bunch. And I will also add links to the other decompilation resources for anyone interested in trying it out for themselves. If this content was interesting to you, or you want to learn more about programming and developing software for the Gameboy Advance, subscribe. I'm still learning a lot and want to keep learning and sharing what I learn, and subscribing really helps out a lot for that. Okay, all right, thanks for watching.